Hey guys, it's Kevin again with probably my most unexpected review yet. I was not expecting to review this show for you guys, but there's a specific reason why. And you guys are probably thinking, why am I reviewing this show to you guys? Because, why would I review something like this? This is not the kind of show that I like. I don't like these kind of shows. I criticize these kind of shows, so why am I reviewing it? Well, there's a reason why. I'm going to be reviewing the series premiere of Jane the Virgin. Now, I know what you guys are thinking, why am I reviewing this? There's a reason why I'm reviewing this, guys. Because this show, I got endless critic acclaim. Endless critic acclaim. When I mean endless critic acclaim, I mean endless critic acclaim. All these people were saying amazing things about it. And I was very surprised, definitely, because the show looked terrible. Like, the plot seemed terrible, it seemed extremely generic, it seemed really stupid, and it just really made me feel like, okay, so you cancel a good show like the Tomorrow People, but you can't, but you put on a show like, you put on a show like Jane the Virgin. Like, it looked really stupid in my opinion. However, last night I checked Rotten Tomatoes, and I don't condone using Rotten Tomatoes as the best source for ratings and reviews. I don't condone that. However, they can be very helpful. And they have this show at 100%. I'm not kidding. They have this show at 100%. Like, that is huge. It's not every day you just throw 100% on a show. When they give 100% to a show, that means the show is absolutely perfect in their opinion. That's really what it means to them. So, I mean, I was just, like, so surprised it was getting all this acclaim. Definitely, I was so surprised about that. It was getting all this critical acclaim. And after watching the pilot, I can definitely see that, because Jane the Virgin surprisingly works really well, and I really enjoyed the show. Call me crazy, but this show is very good, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm surprised by how much I actually end up enjoying the show. And there's so many things this show does right, in my opinion. I'm going to talk about what it does right, but let's just get to this episode, because overall, I really, really enjoyed it. Now, I personally didn't really know the plot of this show. I thought that the plot was completely different than what I thought it was, and let's just get to it. So, I love the way the show is done. It's based off this telenovela, Venezuelan soap opera, Juana la Virgin. However, this show makes fun of it completely, and I'm going to talk about why. Basically, the show, we hear this narration of this guy, and opens with a flashback featuring a 10-year-old Jane, Buena. And according to a voice of God of this narrator, Jane loves her family, God, and grilled cheese sandwiches. And we're then introduced to who she calls her Abuelita, who is also the mom on the grandmother on Swishiper. She also played, Aria on Teen Wolf. So, really good actress. I like the actress, definitely. And her interests are including God and Jane. So just as Jane's instructed to examine the beautiful white flower, her grandmother has handled her mom, Ciamara, her grandmother has handled her. Her mom, Ciamara, interrupts the scene. Now, Ciamara is a complete, not good mother at all. She's a complete teenager. Think of, Lacey on Awkward. You know how much of a pushover Lacey is? You know Lacey tends to act more like a teenager than she does an adult? That is exactly Ciamara. Ciamara is a hilarious character. She is very interested in Jane, and she's interested in this Mexican pop star, Paulina Rubio. I just find that hilarious. So that sets the tone perfectly for the show. Perfectly. That was just perfect. So, her grandmother asked her to make this promise, basically. She says, crumble the flower, now let's make it new again. And she says, you can never go back, and that's what happens when you lose your virginity. You can never go back, never forget that. So we can see that she's very upset about that, definitely. And basically, years later, Jane has kept this promise that she's never had sex until she's married. She's grown up. She now has this boyfriend of 2 years. She's 23. She has this boyfriend, Michael. And it looks like they're about to have sex, but she decides to just keep it to a makeout. And she looks up where the crumbled white flower, and she now sits in an attractive white frame and is posted above her bed. So, we then see she goes to watch, she goes to her mom, to Ciamara and her Abuelita, where they're watching this TV show. And the other thing I like about her grandmother, in my opinion, I think is really cool, is that her grandmother always speaks in Spanish. Like, her grandmother always talks to her in Spanish, and I like that because that's realistic. You know, with a Spanish family, at least one of your relatives is going to speak fluently in Spanish. That's just how it's going to work. So, I thought that was very well done because, you know, I have problems with the show is not realistic, and I applaud them for being realistic with that. Definitely, I like that. So, meanwhile, 8.2 miles away from where Jane lives, but half a world away, as the narrator says, we're next introduced to Rafael Solano. He is the hotel owner, former playboy, and trapped husband. And he's just received news about a financial crisis involving the hotel, and he's being consoled by his wife, Petra. She tells him to relax and then heads downstairs while Rafael gives a content sigh. And we all know what this means. So, you know, basically she gives him a blowjob, and that's what happens there. So, next, we see Roman Zazu. Now, you can already... This show is already very good, in my opinion. I was really enjoying it at this point. I like that. It's very fast-paced, definitely, because it's based off It basically follows how Spanish TV shows are. Apparently, they're, like, extremely... I personally wouldn't know, because I've never seen a Spanish TV show, because I have no Spanish in me whatsoever. So, I've never seen a Spanish TV show, but apparently the show follows the format of that, which I think is definitely very interesting. So then we see Roman Zazu, and he works for the management company that just bought the hotel, and he passes out straws to Jane, her female co-workers. And basically, Jane is the only one not wearing a costume, and she ends up getting picked, and she is wearing this mermaid tail. So she wears it as she floats on half a shell in a hotel pool with a bottle of champagne in her head, and her words start to converge as this is actually Rafael, and the character's worlds start to converge, and I like that they do this, definitely, because we basically find out that this is Rafael's hotel, and he's nearly debating with his sister whether he should get a divorce from his wife, because you can already tell his wife is basically the bitch of the show. She's extremely annoying, she's such a bitch, she's a very good actress, but I gotta say, like, the girl herself definitely is very bitchy. So... But, of course, this is a telenova offshot. So, of course, Petra has been listening to their conversation the entire time. You know, I think that definitely is very interesting. So, Rafael gets up and walks straight into Jane's direction, which caused her to freak out. She dumps the bottle of champagne and then belly flops in the pool. And thanks to Jane's hero, we learn that they've met before. And I thought this was very interesting. You know, she had a crush on him. Basically, her friend told her she had a crush on him. Before the rest of the cocktail waitress can chime in, Jane volunteers to walk a couple bottles of champagne to a waiting table. And she's coolly pouring glasses for guests, well as coolly as, you know, she has a very wet hair, basically. And basically what ends up happening is... Rafael walks over. She looks familiar, he says, but he said, did he once meet her at the strip club, and she kind of thinks him as a jerk at this point. So then we cut to Dr. Louisa Alver. Very important character here. Definitely very important character. She's home. She takes off her high heels, walks to her bedroom, and she's a lesbian. She finds out that her wife is cheating on her. So... But again, what I like is that the show does not take this seriously at all. They just make a joke out of it, which I personally like, because while this show, again, while this all could be very stupid and very soap opera-ish, they find a way to make it work so it's funny, and it works, and it's not like, what the hell am I watching? That's not what I felt like at this point. I felt like, okay, this works. Honestly, at this point, I was like, I am somehow understanding this, somehow this works, and somehow this makes sense to a point where everyone can really watch this show. So... At this point, I felt like they deserved that 100%. So the next morning, a sleepy Jane and a weepy Louisa kick off their days in a well-appointed doctor's office, and the good yet very sad doctor is covering for another OBGYN, and she has two things that's going on. One, we find out that Petra wants to basically get her own sort of, you know, get a semen sample from her husband so she can get pregnant. However, Jane has this other thing going on, because basically Jane, has an insemination, and Jane misses the first part of the conversation because she fell asleep, and upon waking up, she immediately notices two things. One, Louisa is not her usual doctor. That's not who she usually goes to. And this doctor is barely able to control her sobs. She's obviously very upset, but Jane's a little concerned. But she is in and out of it quickly. So, basically, she heads to the exam room where the real artificial insemination patient is waiting, Petra, which means that Dr. Louisa accidentally inseminated a total stranger with her brother's defrosted sperm, which I think is definitely very funny. And again, this could be extremely soap opera-ish, extremely dramatic, but it's hilarious the way it's done. Definitely. This show reminds me a lot of Awkward, because Awkward's a show that also could be very dramatic and very over the top, but it doesn't take itself too seriously, and that's what I really like about the show, because that's what I love about Awkward, is that it doesn't take itself too seriously, and Jane the Virgin does the same thing, which I definitely like. So, basically, we get a very funny scene where, we see that, her mother is literally freaking out, her and Xiomara, her mother's freaking out at first they don't believe the doctor, at first they're not believing this doctor, but it's clearly impossible because she's never had sex, obviously, but, she's like, give her another test, and I thought that was really funny. So, basically she says, you are Immaculata, and I thought that was hilarious. And, basically, her mother's freaking out, and it was just so funny to watch, especially because her mother is not mature at all. She acts definitely like a teenager. And Dr. Alver does have a very good explanation. She's like, oh, I actually inseminated you 2 weeks ago. And Jane's like, you what? She's like freaking out about it. And and then this really random scene comes up. But again, because it's making fun of Spanish TV shows, it works. And we hear the Spanish guitar play. And she struck with the realization she might become the woman she worked her entire life to avoid becoming, which is a young mom, of course. So her eyes wander over to the wall with a rack of magazines, specifically a cover of a Spanish tabloid advertising what people are calling the most popular man on TV, basically, and specifically a cover of a Spanish tabloid advertising this guy. And this guy, basically, she sees him in this vision, and he says everything will be okay. And basically, this is the guy that her mom and her grandmother were watching on the TV before from that soap opera they were watching, which I find very funny that they're making fun of soap operas, yet they were watching one. That is just so self-aware, and that's one of the things I definitely love about the show. So quickly, he's gone, and in his stead, Dr. Alver offers Jane some options and tells her she's not expected to talk to the father, but, she doesn't know who the father is, of course, and, because she's in a committed relationship with this other guy, and, so she's got that going on. So she heads to her boyfriend's home, and he's about to propose to her, and it's really just shows bad timing, because she interrupts to tell him she's pregnant, and the doorbell interrupts, and even though, normally in soap operas this were to happen to be, a very intense scene, he is, so calm. He's like, alright, just tell me the options that are going on here. It was really funny to watch, definitely. And, at the hotel, Rafael learned, what his sister did, that she switched everything. So, he, meanwhile, wants the baby. He wants to know who this baby is, because it was supposed to be his baby, basically. So, we find out that he froze some of his sperm as a precaution before being struck with cancer, and that sperm represents the only chance to become a dad, which is definitely a very interesting twist in my opinion. And even though the show does not take itself too seriously, I thought there was a good twist. It's not really original, but I thought they handled it pretty well in my opinion. So, of course, Petra said she wants to keep it. But quickly, Rafael's phone rings, and it's his sister, Dr. Alver, and she has some news. Jane is actually an employee at the hotel. So Rafael arranges for Jane to stop by the pool, where Jane's about to apologize to him for calling him a jerk. After all, he's her boss, of course. So she doesn't want to be rude to him. She doesn't want to get fired. He's her boss. So that's not what he's here to talk about, of course. So I think this scene was definitely very good. Basically, we find out that they do have, she tells him that they do have a history, and basically they went on this date, and it didn't end up very well. He ended up acting like a jerk, and she tells him she's not ready for motherhood. And he never once mentions about the cancer, which Petra is not happy about. But we find out that Petra might actually be cheating on him with the hotel manager, Roman. Now, I gotta say this about Roman. Roman is a very interesting character, in my opinion. I think his character is probably one of the most interesting characters about the show, because we know nothing about him. And with Roman, there's some sort of, weird investigation going on with this guy, which I think is definitely very interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing what's gonna happen there, because I think that is definitely very interesting. So, Jane is really upset at this point. She goes to have a conversation with her grandmother. Her grandmother first thinks she's going to tell her she had sex, but she tells her, do what she feels is right, and I thought the scene was definitely very well done, I gotta say. And again, when the show wants to be serious, it's serious, and the scene just worked, because it played itself not too seriously. It was just very realistic in the way it was done, and I definitely really enjoyed that. So, Michael shows up at Jane's, and basically he tells her he can't support her pregnancy, even though he wants to, have a life with her. He just can't support it because it's not really his, and he doesn't really know the whole story of it. That makes sense, obviously. And then we get probably what I thought was the funniest scene in the episode. I thought this scene was absolutely hysterical. I thought this scene just worked perfectly, just so funny. Xiomara is channeling her idol, Paulina Rubio, and she's singing karaoke to a song from her. And it works really well, in my opinion, because apparently she's going to be doing this a lot throughout the show, because in the promo, they showed her singing some other songs, like Conga from Gloria Estefan. I think the song was Conga from Gloria Estefan. And it's going to be hilarious to watch. I'm looking forward to her character, definitely. I can already tell Xiomara is probably going to be my favorite character just because of the way she is. She's so funny. So Xiomara and Jane share a moment, but Zio confesses that she always wanted to keep her pregnancy. But it was her mother who had encouraged her to have an abortion. And the lesson to be learned is that Jane has to make her own decisions, and when she makes up her mind, to give the baby to Rafael and his wife Petra. And I really thought that was a good scene. Because here's the thing, Jane could be like, confused about her and whatever, but I think that was definitely the right thing to do. It was supposed to be theirs anyway, so why not give it to them? So all this occurs, and Rafael tells Petra he wants a divorce. And the scene quickly shifts to some sort of sting operation. As I said, there is some sort of weird investigation going on with this Roman guy, so I'm wondering what's going on there. So then back at the bar, we get a hilarious scene here. This is a scene that could have ended up being very dramatic, but was handled in a very comical, funny way, in my opinion. So the bartender tells Zio there's someone to see her, and we find out, and I knew this was coming, we find out before that Jane actually doesn't know who her father is. Basically, what ended up happening was that Zio had her baby. She didn't know who the father. She doesn't even know who the father was, and she never wanted Jane to see her father. And we find out that the guy that is her father is actually the leading man from the telenovela, from the TV show, and the star who appeared before Jane in the exam room, and Jane's father. So that definitely is very funny. And he says he just learned about her, and it was actually handled in a very funny way, in my opinion. I thought the way they handled it was definitely very funny. Because, again, it could have ended up being really stupid, but they handled it really in a funny way, and I definitely enjoyed that. So then at police headquarters, Jane appears to tell Michael that she's decided to give the baby to Rafael and Petra. She then proposes to him, much to the amusement of the detective squad that's gathered to observe them, and he says yes. However, the narrator says, and then everything changed, and that's basically how it ends. So in my opinion, I thought this pilot was definitely very well done, and this is by far the most surprising show of the entire year so far. Most surprising, and I'm going to tell you guys why. This show could have been an absolute piece of shit. It could have been absolutely terrible. The CW is known for these sort of soap opera shows. Definitely, they're known for them. Gossip Girl, 90210, all that kind of crap that I don't want to talk about. But Jane the Virgin is very different from that, because the thing that the show does so well is that it does not take itself too seriously. Yes, it has serious moments, which I like, because it very much reminds me of, like, The Fosters, or Chasing Life, or Switched at Birth, which is a show that knows when to be funny and knows when to be serious, which I definitely really enjoy about this show, because they're also making fun of their original show. Again, this is based off of a very popular soap opera from, like, in Venezuela, and they're making fun of it. Like, nothing that, any of the twists, like, they're not meant to be taken seriously. The thing with her father, I don't think they're going to take that seriously at all. Xiomara is just a character that you're not supposed to take seriously, definitely. Let's get to the acting in the show. I think the thing that makes the show work so well is the acting. The acting is fantastic in the show, especially for a show that could not ended up being not very good at all. The acting is fantastic. Gina Rodriguez, this girl is definitely a breakout star. She is amazing in the show. I love her character. I love how she has kept her promise. I love the kind of, mannerisms she has. I loved how, her kindness. She's just such a good character, in my opinion. I'm looking forward to see what else her character does. I think she definitely is a very good character and a good protagonist, definitely. I like her character, and she definitely is very good. She also is kind of what makes the show, not as serious as it could be because of the way her character is, so I definitely enjoy that. Justin Baldoni as Rafael. He is fantastic. I love his character. I think he's great, and not much to say there. Brett Deer as Michael. Definitely very interesting character because, you know, he is a detective. He's investigating this, you know, thing about Roman. I want to know what's going on with Roman. I think that is interesting. And I like that they are taking seriously because, in my opinion, that is the most interesting plot on the show. While I do like, you know, the relationship drama, it's, like, awkward. They don't take it too seriously, and I do like that. So, Andrea Navido as Ziamara, I already told you guys she's my favorite character. She's absolutely hilarious. I love everything about her character. She's probably going to be the best character on the show. And I can't wait to see what else her character does. She's so funny. Y'all Grobglass as Petra, you know, she's probably the main antagonist in the show. She definitely is a very good character, but I'm looking forward to seeing what else happens with her character, because her character definitely is very interesting. Ivan Cole is great, and also Jamie Camille as Jane's father. That's going to be awkward, definitely, when that happens. The directing in the show is what makes this show so good, though. Because the tone of this show is just perfect. Perfect. They're making fun of a telenovela. Now, I know I keep saying telenovela, but because that's what they call it in Venezuela, it's a telenovela. And basically, they're making fun of that kind of aspect because it's so fast-paced. And I like that the show is fast-paced because it goes perfectly with how the show is, definitely, and I really like that. So, you know, it makes fun of itself. The directing definitely is very good. The cinematography on the show is also very good. The editing is perfect. That's what makes this show so good, is the editing. It'll literally go to a scene and then cut back to the middle of the scene. I cannot tell you guys how many times I've seen my mom watching soap operas. I watch them with her, but, like, I've seen her watching soap operas. And it randomly cuts in the middle of the scene. I'm like, why'd they just do that? And I was like, oh, that's what they do. This show does that. This show makes fun of that. And I think that's awesome because I think that's awesome because, again, this could be a terrible show, but it works so well because of the way the show is. I know I've said it a million times, but that's why the show is so good. And I'm not reviewing the rest of the season to you guys. I will review the season, but I'm not reviewing the show individually just because I don't want to. I don't think it's a show I need to. Let me know what you guys saw this premiere. Overall, I thought this was the most surprising premiere of the year so far. I'm definitely looking forward to the next episode. I think this show is already off to a great start. That's it for my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for tonight's episode of The Flash. So I'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.